Hi, Christian, and welcome to One Woman's Journey. Thanks so much for joining us today. So, if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you're up to, and that would be great to hear a bit about you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Rachel. Thank you very much for inviting me to do this. It's a real privilege, and it's nice to have a chance to get to know you a bit better. So, my name is Christian McNeill. I currently live in Glasgow, and I am a three principles or inside out coach and facilitator, and I have been for about 6 years now, maybe a little more. But before that, I was a lawyer for many years. I was a court lawyer, first of all, for about 20 years, and then I was a tribunal judge. And so in terms of my career, that was that was fairly okay, fairly successful. I had its sort of ups and downs, and but that part of my life was sort of box ticked, if you like. But there were other parts of my life that certainly weren't, and I suppose one of the big things that was part of my journey was discovering in my 20s, kicking and screaming really, that I had a drinking problem, and I'd had a drinking problem for years actually, and like many people in Scotland, I started drinking very young. And by the time I went to university, I was sort of drinking daily, but it didn't occur to me that I had a problem. And it was in my mid-20s that the possibility, the horrible possibility, began to dawn on me. And I went through a period of 2 years that were just absolute hell, where my emotional life was a complete shambles, that relationships were a shambles. There was just nothing solid or sustaining or wholesome really in my life. Because I was self-employed, and I managed, and because there was a culture of lots of drinking, the minute you left court really, and at the weekends and so on. My job was sort of secure. It wasn't really affected by this. I wasn't in a 9-to-5 job. I didn't have a boss or anything like that. But I reached a point. Where I couldn't kid myself anymore. It was completely out of control. I couldn't. If I started drinking, I didn't know where it would end. Things would happen when I was drunk that were, humiliating and dangerous sometimes, and deeply unpleasant. And even if I stopped drinking, even if I, woke up after drinking and resolved not to drink for a period, I couldn't follow through in that promise. Mm-hmm. And then one night, shortly before Christmas, I was out, and I, just caught sight of myself and reflected in a mirror in a shop window, and I just hated what I'd become. But what's more interesting to me now, in that moment, there was just a deep shift, and I thought, I can't do this anymore. I just can't do it. I did already know about AA. I knew about recovery, and I so didn't want it. I didn't want that to have to be the path that I took. But in that moment, there was a sort of shift at depth where really wanting a better life, really wanting something more wholesome for myself, overtook all the reluctance I had to, to stop drinking, become abstinent, and it's really only with retrospect that I see how powerful that moment was, where I really just kind of gave up on myself, gave up on everything I knew. And I don't mean that as I gave up on myself as a bad thing. It was like gave up on all my old ideas, and it was a real turning point. And it also, again, this only becomes clear with hindsight, but I no longer, the whole desire to drink, the whole craving to drink, it was just removed. It just disappeared in an instant. So that was a massive shift for me, and it became a very different kind of life, because of the nature of Scottish society where I lived at that time, and well, do now. I had a year in America at one stage in between, but it's such a sort of culture that's all socializing centered around boozing. So I had to find other things. I had to find new people and new interests, and my life really opened up actually. And I did all sorts of different things, and that was very interesting. But I also became more and more interested in the mind and what makes it work and what's going wrong when it goes wrong, because I still didn't really know quite what had happened to me or why, and I was curious, I remember wanting someone to tell me what's wrong with, what was wrong with me, why had I turned to alcohol, why had it become a problem, and I also wanted to say, and this is what you need to do to fix it. And I had this, I guess I was carrying around this sort of model that I was somehow broken or damaged. And people even said that in terms, and other people said, if you work very hard, you can be whole again, you can be better. So I was kind of really willing to do that. However, everything I tried didn't really seem to have the desired effect. And it was like the more I tried, the more elusive, true happiness and contentment was. And, there were some periods that were better than others, but I think I was probably also, I was still looking outside myself, but for answers. So I was looking for some kind of psychological solution or explanation or course. Sometimes I was looking for security in relationships, and it was like everywhere I looked outside of myself seemed to take me further away from what I was actually looking for. Relationships actually became more difficult, not easier, and that's a bit of a generalization, but there's something in that. And I would certainly say that there was just an underlying insecurity in me that was not going away, and that I couldn't find the answer to, no matter what I did. And I trained in all sorts of different fields like NLP, hypnotherapy, Reiki, reflexology. So I was still practicing as a lawyer, but I had all these other things on the side, and so on. And then NLP, I would say, was probably the one that seemed to be the most effective for me of those all those various things that I trained in. And just over 8 years ago, I came across a course being run by an NLP trainer, or someone I knew as an NLP trainer, and it was a weekend in London about growing your practice with integrity. Oh, this is for me. Oh, God. Anyway, it turned out it was all about this thing called the 3 principles, also known as the inside out understanding. And it just hit me that first weekend that I've stumbled into something that I don't really know what it is, but I do know that it's what I've been looking for, and I do know that I am going to be involved in this somehow for the rest of my life. That's how I felt that first weekend. And I think the biggest insight or takeaway that I had was that I wasn't broken at all. But I had spent the last 20 years at that point, more than 20 years perhaps, trying to fix something that wasn't broken, and the relief was immense. I mean, it was really immense. And not only could I see that for myself, but I could see that I didn't think of my kids as broken, but I felt that all humans, you needed to be very careful about mental health and be doing all sorts of things to maintain it. And so I've been very, very focused on my 2 children who'd been born after I got sober, just making sure that they were okay and putting a lot of effort into that. And suddenly that just seemed just ridiculous. I mean, absolutely unnecessary, almost like, trying to make sure that your car doesn't fly off into space in case gravity switches off. Just completely ridiculous. And I felt such that, that relief too, that they are okay. They do not need me hovering and fixing and prompting all the time. They have everything that they need within them, as we all do.
Mm.
So it was a huge. There were other things that from that first weekend. Another one, which is, I suppose, not really directly three principles, but maybe sort of an implication of the understanding, is that this idea that we all do up and we all go up and down or in and out, and I'm not really, I'm not fixed on the terminology, but that we have good moods and bad moods, and times of being more spiritual and times being less spiritual, whatever, that, and like everything else in nature, there's variability, and it's the norm. It's unavoidable. Just as the weather, variability in the weather or a heart rate is the norm. And again, it's almost like, when I think back, it's almost like a physical release. I just think, I'm already there. I've been trying to create something possible, and I can stop doing that. Yeah. And it's good enough for me. That's good enough for me. If so those were some of the things. I'm sure there were others, but those were probably two of the biggest things that hit me on that particular weekend. Alongside just this whole idea of the capacity for insight, what I might describe as a deep and sudden shift on, fresh thinking on a subject or on and I saw that I had insights throughout my life before that, and that again, that's part of the human condition. But I hadn't. If you'd asked me, I would probably have said, that's the sort of thing that happens just a few times in a lifetime.
So it sounds like you were carrying a sense of insecurity, and things had happened. You'd ended up having to go through stopping drinking and everything that meant. And yet, at the same time, there was still some insights, but you were left with that insecurity, and your search continued.
Yeah.
I wonder what if anything, you decided about yourself, or you decided what was causing that insecurity, and why you were looking for something to fix you.
Do you know, I honestly didn't know. Even going back, and that was one of the things, even going back to much younger, or I can remember being insecure as a child, and about various different things. And I would avidly read the problem pages, and I was looking for, who's got my problem. And they never, ever had a proper answer. There's sometimes similar problems, not always, but that's relevant. But the answers were always rubbish. They were things, you feel jealous because you're insecure. You need to get over that. I never told you how.
Not helpful.
Not helpful at all. And that has been one of the greatest gifts of coming across this understanding, because now I do know where that insecurity comes from. And it's not that I never have it. I do have it, but I know that when I feel insecure, the only thing that insecurity is telling me, that feeling of insecurity is telling me, is I'm thinking some insecure thoughts at the moment. I'm entertaining some ideas or beliefs about myself, and they're not true. They're not necessarily true. They're just what's cropped. They have no more significance than a bad dream. And in fact, most of the time, I'm not insecure. And what I think I was doing previously, because I was never insecure all the time, but I'd kind of joined the dots from those moments that I was, and created a picture of myself. Insecurity is one of my problems.
Yes. So it became part of your identity, really. I'm an insecure person.
Yeah, a made-up identity. Yeah, I know, a really sort of fabricated one, and still, today, I hear people, sometimes I'm working with people, and say, I've got really low self-esteem, as though it's a thing, and it's not a thing. It's sometimes what you're saying is, sometimes you have insecure thoughts and you believe them.
Yeah.
you know, and welcome to the world.
Yes, exactly. So we're always feeling our thinking, aren't we, in the moment, really? But yet
Yeah,
that thinking comes and goes, doesn't it?
yeah. Those, it's, you know, it's beliefs, and we have similar beliefs, you know. So you know, the similar beliefs come back at different times, but they are, each moment is fresh and unique. You know, that it's not even identical. You know, it's just as each, you know, each time we dream, I mean, even if we have a recurring dream, it's fresh and
Mm,
unique each time. There might be similarities, but it's not identical.
mm,
And the reason I say that is it's good to know that you know that each moment is unique. Each moment, it's what I'm thinking and feeling in this moment that's happening. It's what's occurring in this moment. And also in each moment, there is the potential to see that, to wake up to that, and to remember that the thinking and the feeling are transient, but there's an essence below that that's
mm,
more reliable, that's more
mm,
constant, and that's
mm,
always available to me and to each of us.
mm.
It's the source of wisdom and insight and resourcefulness and resilience and creativity.
And I guess that's you sort of describing the difference between feeling broken and actually coming to see that actually we're not broken.
Yeah.
And we have that innate well-being, both physically and mentally, physical health and mental health.
Mm.
So it would be great if you could say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, and clearly it's possible for people to become, me included, uh, to become very caught up in their thinking, their beliefs about themselves, and to create, you know, to innocently and unwittingly create a mental state that, you know, is very busy-minded or stressed.
Mm,
And about 10 years ago, maybe a little more, you know, so despite all the work I'd done in these years of trainings and everything else, I became really kind of burned out. And it was just that, you know, my mind was, you know, I felt I had so many things always on my mind. I felt everything was down to me.
mm,
And my mind was so busy and overwhelmed. And then that, you know, and the mind then impacts impacts the brain chemistry, and impacts the body, and you know, things occur. But with both the mind and the body, there is an inbuilt system that, if it's given a chance, will restore us to
mm,
normality, to wholeness, to wellness. And you know, it's just that they were always just, you know, coming back to that place. And in fact, even then, and that was pre-principles, I kind of knew what I needed.
yeah.
In that period, I knew what I needed, you know, which was just to be quite still. It was the summertime, to lie in the grass, just to sort of recharge, and you know, to come just to come back to normality. And each of us has that capacity, but I think that because we live in a culture that doesn't necessarily recognize that,
Mm,
there's a danger. And you know, I suppose initially for me to then, here's a new label to give myself, someone who gets stressed, who's prone to burnout. And I
mm,
was just, you know, I on that particular, at that particular time, that's what was going on. And what's clear to me now is that there's still times when I can feel stressed or, you know, overwhelmed with things that are going on, but the message I take from that is different, because it's really just telling me what's going on in my mind. It's not telling me what's going on in my life, or about my value as a human being, or my okayness, or anything else. It's not, you know, and it's just feedback of
mm,
you know, your mind is busy and you're taking all those thoughts very seriously, and really possibly time to just go for a walk and do
mm.
less, not more.
Yes, exactly. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really the difference, isn't it, between who we really are
Mm-hmm.
and actually what's running through our minds at any given moment that
Yeah.
might be creating an identity or beliefs about ourselves which aren't true.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're currently working, and your business name is Elements of Wellbeing. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. I had a kind of extraordinary shift in careers a couple of years after I came into this, and life law. And this is this is what I do. What I work with individuals, and I work with groups and organisations, and I do some online work, and it's been a wonderful experience, an extraordinary development, and I had to learn loads of new things, in my 50s, coming to discover the whole world of, the online world, Zoom,
Yes.
Skype, Facebook,
Yes.
etc., etc.
Yeah. I can certainly relate to that, Christian, definitely.
Yeah. And most of my working life, as a lawyer, I was dealing with people with problems, and often with mental health problems. And it's so lovely to be in a different role with that, because sometimes still people come to me because they're feeling stressed, burnt out, anxious, or whatever, and it one of the things I love about this work is the hope that it gives people, and how quickly people can respond, because if it's the case that each of us already has a kind of psychological immune system within, and we just need to point to that, very quickly people start hearing those, what the inner promptings. Oh, this is what I need. Yes, that's right. It's not on us to kind of implant it. It's already there, and you're just giving a little nudge or a little point, or if you thought about that. And so often people respond very, very quickly and experience relief quickly, and hope. And I'm, I feel as though this is a vocation as well as a job, as well as a business, that, and I'm, and that's a tremendous privilege. It's, really tremendous privilege to be involved in that way at this point in my life.
Christian, thanks so much for joining us today. That's been great. And
thank you.
We'll pop your details on our facilitators page, and people can find you there, and your website and your Facebook page, and your details. And just thanks so much. That's been brilliant. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.